We are on the air, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my gosh, I'm really excited about today's show. My guest today is the master behind the wheels of steel, one of the most talented turntablists, producer, performer, founding member of Jurassic 5, and Ozomatli collaborator. Today on the show, Cut Chemist. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Well, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this is actually happening. For me, it's like coming from such a small, tiny country in South America. I am in Ecuador.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought that one day technology would allow me to have a podcast and talk to DJs, artists, rappers, musicians from all over the world, with some people that I grew up listening to, and admiring. So this is amazing. Thank you so much, Cut, for being part of my podcast. Thank you for doing this.
Of course. And I have to say, I do love traveling through Central and South America, and I've never been to Ecuador. So it's one of my places on my list to visit.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about that because I know you were in Colombia and Brazil, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is incredible. Thank you, Internet, for this moment. So you've been making music for so long, right? You've been recording, performing for over 30 years now. I think you started DJing when you were 11, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I would like to start at the beginning. So what was like your first taste of hip hop that you remember?
Well, as I get older, it's harder and harder to remember what the very first time was that I laid eyes on breakdancing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it was. For some people, people may have heard Planet Rock on the radio or Rapper's Delight. I didn't. I got caught up by watching people spin on their heads and um, marveled in that and just went, "What's
Oh,
going
really? Was
on?"
it b-boying? Okay.
Yeah. People spinning on their heads. I didn't know what it was called back then, but yeah, it was b-boying. And I think I kept seeing it. There was like a news program, and then there was like a presidential event where I think New York City Breakers were dancing or something like that.
Yeah.
It was just consistent. And then Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk on Motown 25 ceremony televised event. So these I started to see different at different times a new sensation,
Mm-hmm.
and it was sweeping the nation with young people and from all walks of life, from people, all classes, all types of shows. And so when I saw that, I saw it was accompanied with somebody manipulating records. And
Yeah.
I had already had a fascination with collecting records. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to be a radio DJ,
Mm-hmm.
probably since I was 9 years old. And, I enjoyed listening to the radio. I enjoyed buying records that I heard on the radio. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I saw somebody scratching records, it was probably the Rocket video by Herbie Hancock.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, wow, I want to do that. I want to do it all. I want to break dance. I want to scratch records. I want to do graffiti because I was drawing a lot. I had a
Mm-hmm.
penchant for the arts, so
Yeah.
I got involved in all of it. I did graffiti. I DJ'd. I'm not gonna say I DJ'd. I bought records to scratch on my parents' turntable, and I practiced trying to do what was being done by DST on Rocket.
Yeah.
And then as time goes on, you hone in your craft. You keep doing it.
Yeah.
By about 86, I started to listen to the radio. There was a radio station called KDAY out here
Hmm.
that it was the only 24-hour station that played rap continuously. I mean, they didn't only play rap, but they programmed it in their 24-hour
Hmm.
rotation. So they had
Cool.
specialty shows on the weekends where DJs would cut it up, and so I would listen to those, record them, and try to learn what they were doing, not by sight but by ear, which was a completely different way of learning how to DJ than today, which people have like video tutorials and stuff.
Yeah,
And
YouTube, right?
and then I just kept practicing and practicing, and eventually I started to do parties and actually make money around probably 87, I would say. Yeah.
87. So you grew up in LA, right?
Yeah, this is all in Los Angeles.
Oh, and I was wondering. So, how did the West Coast hip hop party start? Like, what would you say was the, I don't know, the rapper that put LA on the map?
No, no. You know what put LA on the map was the mobile DJ. Mobile
The
DJs
mobile DJ.
were huge in LA.
All
It was
right.
like
Okay.
um, mobile DJs and house parties. That was LA
Uh
culture.
huh. All right.
We had our club scene, and the club scene was great, but the house party, because LA was so spread out.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it was like a 50-mile radius of house party, you know, house parties
Yeah.
in every direction. So
Uh huh.
I cut my teeth DJing house parties and just going like whatever. It's like quinceañeras, birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, stuff like that. And then eventually there was like parties in school gyms,
Uh huh.
gymnasiums and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I met Charlie Tuna, at one
All
of
right.
those.
But
And
this
yeah,
is this before NWA and Dr. Dre and
this
stuff?
is about the same time
About the same
as
time,
NWA started. So you got to think like,
because that was huge, right?
yeah, not
NWA.
NWA straight out of Compton, but NWA like Dope Man and
Yeah.
Boys in the Hood by Eazy-E, that kind of that era.
Yeah.
So this is that 87.
87. What was your first record? I mean, this is probably a question that a lot of people ask you, but how many records do you have? How many albums?
I don't know. I stopped counting at 30,000. So
30,000.
I would say it's, probably around there.
Around 30,000. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a decent number, right?
Yeah, although, I sell records too, so I probably, since
Yeah.
the pandemic started, I've probably gotten rid of
Hmm.
like maybe 2 or 3,000. So,
Hmm.
um,
So was music always a part of your life, or was
yeah.
there a
Yeah,
situation?
yeah,
Yeah.
ever since I
Yeah.
could see and walk and hear, it's
Yeah.
been in the family. My dad wrote music. He recorded music. We had musician friends come over,
Oh, cool.
bring their instruments. My mom played piano. So yeah, it was pretty natural to pick it up.
Cool. And when did you discover? So let's talk now a little bit about these Caribbean tropical rhythms. When did you discover cumbia, for example,
Mm.
or
Well,
how?
a couple of things. Ozomatli was. I'm trying to think of when we wrote the song Cumbia. I don't. So we started in '95.
Yeah, with
Um,
Ozomatli, right?
with Ozomatli. Yeah, Ozomatli was founded in '95, and the group was already experimenting with West African rhythms,
Mm-hmm.
salsa, um, you know, Latin jazz, all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
cumbias. But I gotta say that I really fell in love with cumbias through a mixtape from a guy in Chicago, and his name was Cooley Mack, and he's a friend of Charlie Tuna's. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why he gave me this tape, and it was because it wasn't hip hop or anything, but he was just like, "Here, check this out."
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because I was in Ozomatli, but it was like really early, like within the first year I was in Ozomatli. So he gave me this tape,
Oh, cool.
and it was all Colombian.
Hmm.
So there was like Fruco, so there was salsa, Joe Arroyo, people
Hmm.
like that. But then there was
Yeah.
just like some really heavy cumbia shit too,
Hmm.
and I just fell in love with it. I played it all the time. It was like the only tape
Really?
I had in my car that summer.
Wow.
And
That's so
then
cool.
Ozomatli does cumbia, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I started to kind of make connections with cumbia and dub and reggae, like because they kind of have the same rhythm a little bit, like the two, like one, you know. And so I started to
Yeah.
blend those types of records together, and I don't know if that was inspired by cumbia or if cumbia was inspired by that, but we do that in cumbia. And I know Will Dog, who is huge into to dub reggae, he probably had a lot to do with me making that connection.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And then you actually traveled to Colombia and Brazil, right? Can you tell us a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit about those experiences?
A few years ago, yeah, we went
Yeah.
to
Did you spend a lot of time there?
not nearly enough. No, it was two
Yeah.
weeks, and we
Yeah.
traveled around, and it was just me and my girlfriend, and we spent the most time. Well, it felt like we spent the most time in Cali
Mhm.
with Quantic and B plus,
Oh, with Quantic, really?
and he was showing us around that Petronio Alvarez Music Festival, which is a battle of the bands in the
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest of the Pacific Northwest type of
Uh-huh.
music in Colombia, which is more like the African um, based kind of music.
Yeah. I think
And
they play a music style called champeta. Did you go to one of
champeta,
those
yeah, yeah, yeah,
parties?
yeah, yeah. We
Those are really crazy
experienced
parties, right? Oh.
quite a bit of champeta at this
Oh.
island off of Cartagena. Actually,
Uh-huh.
it was wild, and I've
Yeah.
never heard it or seen it before. So that was like, it was like seeing hip hop for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Really?
was,
Was it
it
so?
was a lot of fun.
Wow. That's really cool. So what I love about hip hop, it's for me growing up in the 90s, no internet. So the only thing you can have an idea of what was going on in urban America, it was hip hop, no? And the sound was for me so futuristic and funky and sometimes weird. No, I'm a big fan of Beastie Boys and De La Soul and so. So there were so many innovative and fun elements that is what got me really into hip hop because I love technology. So I was so what this is a drum machine, and sampling on all of that. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that now.
Hmm.
I don't know the science and technology part of hip hop. I know that one of the key concepts in hip hop is to come up with the most rare, obscure loops or samples, and but I know that is just one part of the job, right? The other part is turning those samples into beats. So what is a sampler, Cut, and what is sampling? So,
Um, my first my first experience with sampling was in 1988.
mhm,
I had this keyboard sampler. It was a Roland, and it only sampled 4 seconds. And
mhm,
we
mhm.
made all our first demos with that.
All right.
Basically, yeah, I would just take a record and anything I could grab that was 4 seconds and have it on repeat on beat. Um, I would extend that into like a 3 minute
Uh-huh.
musical backdrop and then have the rappers, like Charlie Tuna, rap over that and record it. And that was our song.
Uh-huh.
Um, as technology progressed, I think, I graduated from that Roland keyboard sampler to an MPC 60,
All right.
which was
The SP 1200, that's before, I think. No?
no, but
Was it
I didn't use the SP 1200. I never have.
that's like the iconic one, I guess. No?
Yeah, the SP
The
1200
first one.
came around like in '86, I think.
Uh-huh.
Made famous by people like Cypress Hill and
Yeah, yeah.
Ultramagnetic and people like
Were
that.
those expensive?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
never bought one, but the
Yeah.
MPC-60 was. I think the MPC-60 was like $2,500, and
Right.
it was. These are sequencing samplers, so it not only sample records snippets of music, but it also can sequence it into an arrangement. Um,
Uh-huh.
so and they do have stock sounds, so they also are drum machines. So drum machines, sampling sequencers, pretty much all in one. Everything you needed to make a song was with this machine, and so I used the MPC-60, which is pretty much just using the SP1200 template, but a.k.a. made it instead of MU, and yeah, so I used that for I think well into the '90s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then I don't think I upgraded to Pro Tools until 2004.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so 2004 I used Pro Tools. In which case I ditched all the machines and just did everything on Pro Tools. I recorded in there. I mean, you have
Pro
unlimited
Tools.
recording capability and sampling time, so I just started to record straight into there and do all my arranging and manipulating and chopping in
Uh-huh.
the on the grid in Pro Tools. Still do, actually.
Mhm. Did you go to college to learn all this stuff, or was it just learning by doing kind of
No,
thing?
no, just learned from friends. I went to college
Yeah,
and got a degree in fine art.
I used to the art.
Hmm.
And what is kind of your secret formula? How would you describe your own technique, cut? What is the cut technique?
The cut technique is
Yeah.
storytelling through music and sounds from different regions of the world. I
Yeah.
like to, yes, I like to use obscure records to make loops, but that isn't always the case. Sometimes it's better to use a record that people know and chop it in a
Mm-hmm.
new way so that they know what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing with the record. I think
Mm-hmm.
somebody like DJ Premier came and wrote that law. He was using not so obscure drum breaks. We could recognize them, and at that time, the rule was to use the most obscure records, but he didn't. He used like the most
Okay.
known drum breaks, but he flipped them in a way that no one
Uh-huh.
ever thought possible.
Uh-huh.
And
That's really
so
interesting. Yeah.
it kind of made us think like, oh, it's actually cool to use non-obscure records. Premiere made it
Yeah.
cool to break the rules. And
Premiere. Yeah.
so I think from then on, people started to kind of loosen up on those rules of obscurity and started to use known things. And then that's when you get things like, you know, uh, Jay-Z and Kanye using Otis Redding and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Hammer using Can't Touch It. What is it? Super Freak by Rick James. Sometimes people want to hear something they know. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Premiere was that perfect hybrid of both, where it was like, oh, that shit's corny, but Premiere came and said, no, it's not. Watch what I do with it. And so I like to use that sensibility where yes, I like to flex my obscurity, and they
Yeah.
call flexing the deep crate. Um, but I also, there's a time to, put something in there that people can recognize just to kind of um, obscure the rules a little bit and make it fun, and not so intellectual.
Yeah. 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 I understand. Would you say is there a record that sort of changed your career in a way? Maybe one of those obscure or records.
That changed my career, like a record that I dug up that might have changed my
Yeah.
career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, Mulatu Estatke from Ethiopia.
Oh yeah. I saw him. I think it was in 2010 in Berlin. He's the greatest, right?
Yeah, he
Did
was
you hear
doing
him?
a lot of performing a few years
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
and
That's awesome.
Ethiopian jazz
Mm-hmm.
just like a lot of people, really affected me
Yeah.
on a deep spiritual level. Just the scale of music that they play,
Hmm. Hmm.
and um, the language, the way the voices, the way it's performed.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I talked to.
that was something that I tried to embrace in hip hop production fairly
Yeah.
early on, and even still do. I mean, even songs like "What's the Altitude" from my audience's listening album kind of has an Ethiopian scale to it, you know,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
Ethiopian.
Yeah.
Um,
That's really amazing.
yeah,
I.
and you know, you can zoom out and see, like, you know, there's Angolan influences, certainly, you know, South American, Brazilian, um, you know, and Colombian influences, and all the stuff that I do. I do world music mixes that pay homage to those areas, and those rhythms. Cuban is huge. Cuban is another one.
Yeah.
You know, going to places, finding music and bringing it back has a bigger impact than when I just discover it. And so
Mm.
Cuba is one of those places where,
They have incredible good musicians, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, Ozomatli, we went out there in '97, so it was fairly early, certainly for
yeah.
Americans,
Yeah.
in my generation anyway. And we were, you know, lucky enough to play with musicians out there. And being a DJ, you know, to be in that country DJing at that time was crazy. I mean, it was like there were
Wow.
hardly any DJs out there. They didn't have any rap. They knew Snoop Doggy Dogg and Tupac. You know, Charlie Tuna was an instant superstar on the street in Havana.
Yeah. Wow.
It was amazing. And to buy records back then and bring them back, and, you know, listen to, you know, Son and Los Van Van, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. It was incredible. And we just recently went back not last year, 2 years ago, and it was it was incredible 2 years ago. You know, a
Hmm.
lot more opened up,
Hmm.
but the music is still there. It's still very spiritual, and yeah, it still affects me. I love
That's awesome.
Cuban culture,
Yeah.
Cuban music.
Yeah. Yeah. Traveling and discovering music. That's the formula, right?
It is. It really is.
Discovering new sounds. It really is. Yeah, I believe so. I think
Yeah.
so. I mean, I lived a big part of my life in Europe, and then I came back here to my hometown, Ecuador, and I decided to live in the Amazon rainforest because I thought this place has something that it has to be discovered also. So there's some sort of inspiration. I don't know what it is, nature, whatever
Is
you
it
want,
fairly,
whatever you want to call it, right?
is it
But
desolate,
apparently,
or is there community, or is it a
no,
city?
it's actually a city, but I live pretty much in the countryside. So I'm really surrounded by nature. So if you come to my place, you would say, "Wow, you really live in the jungle, right?" So
Wow.
it's kind of cool. So it's a fairy
Is there,
tale kind of house.
what kind of music is there?
Well, that's a good question, because we have different indigenous communities here, and they speak different languages, and they have different
Mm,
instruments, to make music. So uh, there is this sort of
yeah.
cosmic, spiritual nature in the music here. Maybe because of the shaman culture,
Mm,
they always seek this
wow.
spiritual reunion. Yeah, so they have their own natural elements, their own instruments. It's very cool. But I'm not an expert, and it's something that I
Yeah.
want to discover, and because there is a lot to preserve, I guess. you know
Excellent.
yeah. And what was it, New York? So you grew up in Los Angeles. Did you also go to New York during the 80s and 90s? I suppose, yeah,
I
no?
did. Yeah.
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 Did
My sister went to school at NYU, so
yeah.
the summers of
Did you
87,
spend uh,
I think it was 80, yeah, 87, 88, 89, and 90. So no, no, no. It
yeah.
was the summer of, I believe, 88, 89, and 90. Yeah, those are the 3 summers. And those years are crazy. Like, what years to go to New York? I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
88, especially.
Did you go to
Because
any
I
New
was
York
listening.
clubs?
No, I was too young for that. But what I
Oh,
did was I recorded, you know, the Red Alert radio show, Chuck Chill Out, and I just
oh, cool.
really immersed myself into the culture. Oh, and I went record shopping a lot. So the music
Yeah.
culture sans nightclubbing because I was only 14,
Hmm.
and I wasn't about to try to deal with going to a nightclub in a strange city
Yeah.
as a
I
14-year-old
think
white kid.
Danceria, the Latin Quarter. I think those are
Yeah, the
one of
Latin
the
Quarter.
most.
Boy, can you imagine that? Me going to the Latin Quarter as a 14-year-old white
Yeah.
kid? Yeah, that would have been something.
Jesus.
Um, but I had my hands full already with buying records, going to Music
Yeah. Yeah.
Factory, which is one of the major outlets, and then listening to these radio programs and taping them and bringing them back home. It was like going to Mecca, and
Hmm.
and learning teachings and bringing them back and spreading the gospel to people here in LA.
Yeah.
It had a lot to do with my direction in hip hop and which eventually led me to J5, embracing East Coast culture, hip hop, um, and having that. I still have those tapes, and I still listen to them
Yeah.
and just love them. I love East Coast based hip hop culture. It's my favorite
Yeah.
thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big culture. It's incredible what happened in New York
Yeah,
at
I
that
mean, well, it
time, right?
started there, right? So, of course, you feel that when you go there.
Yeah. Yeah. And in LA, were you part of a gang or an affiliate? how did you
I thought
actually
I
meet?
had to be back then. It's funny. I thought I had to be a part of a gang. I thought, like, okay, in 1986, because I was doing graffiti and things were
Yeah.
pretty gnarly on the street in LA in
Uh-huh.
'86 when you were out there, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
spray painting your name on the walls. It used to be, you would do art, and then all of a sudden it was like tagging and you were part of a gang. And so I was like, damn, okay, I guess I have to be a part of a gang. And then I didn't. Thank God that just kind of wore off me anyway. And I saw other friends get involved in gangs and stuff like that through doing
Yeah.
graffiti art.
Yeah.
And I just kind of kept my head down and kept honing in on my craft of DJing and what would eventually become producing when I decided to get that sampler and
Yeah.
just focused on that.
Yeah. And with Jurassic 5, how did you form as a group? Were you?
Well, in '87, when I met Charlie Tuna, we and Mark Seven,
Yeah.
we formed a group called Unity Committee, and
Yeah.
that was that lasted until '94. And so '87 to '94, we were making demos, doing parties, trying to get signed to record labels, and came close a couple times. But then in '94, when we met Rebels of Rhythm and we made the song Unified Revolution, we became Jurassic 5. And that was a unique enough thing coming from LA that um, caught the ear of record execs.
Hmm.
And we got signed, and thus was born Jurassic 5
Awesome.
in
Yeah.
1994.
1994.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk about a little bit about your solo albums.
Hmm.
Like, what inspire you, or what inspired the sound on the audience listening, and how is it different from the sound on Die Cut? Because there is a few years went by between those albums. No, a lot of time.
You mean die cut or an audience is listening in which album? How they're different?
Die Cut. Yeah.
Die cut. Okay. Um, Audience is listening is God. How do I explain this? And what was my influence? I think
Yeah.
listening to
The inspiration.
yeah, the
Yeah.
inspiration was a bunch of things. I mean, obviously, if you're gonna make a DJ record post DJ Shadow introducing, that's gonna make its way into the influence.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. Him being a friend and it hitting everybody so hard, and including myself, I really liked the emotional vulnerability of that album
Mhm.
of introducing, and that was a huge step for DJs in hip hop, especially to take note of. And so I wanted to go kind of like a different direction, just for the simple fact that I'm a different personality than DJ Shadow.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
go kind of in a more extroverted way. So take Kid Koala,
Mhm.
another huge influence.
Yeah.
So I would say that my album lands somewhere in between Kid Koala and DJ Shadow. It has the extrovert personality and performance of a Kid Koala album, but it also has kind of a reserved yet emotional complexity of, or at least it tries to be, of an introducing. So
Mhm.
that's what I was going for. Those were my influences
Mhm.
uh, when I was making the record.
Yeah.
And where do I fit in? Because I love both, and I feel connected to both. And so songs like my first big break were the result of those two things. I was also huge in like music theory and rhythms and changing rhythms within one song, which happens in lesson 6, which is prior to this stuff.
Yeah.
But my first big break does it. I wanted to make it fun, continue the dialogue record use, but not overdo it to where people thought that's all I did. So I wanted to start the album off with it and then get out of it. I wanted to pay an homage to my trip to Brazil
Mhm.
with the garden. So, it had travel, it had adventure, it had sci-fi, it had, um, Eat on and Live on Storm, which ticked the box of hardcore rap over a futuristic beat that also kind of oddly sounded um, like old school electro rap,
Mhm.
um, and psychedelic. I mean, there's so many different things that were going on: psychedelic music, rap music, world music. It was all
Mhm.
really hard to contain all those influences, and it took me 4 years, I think. Yeah, 4 years to make that record
4 years.
because I had to make sense of all this stuff.
Of course.
How
Yeah.
do I tell my story of my life on my first album
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
have all these things to say?
Yeah.
And I did. I love that album. It's a lot of fun to listen to. It sounds like somebody having a lot of fun in their bedroom, just experimenting with music and different techniques of storytelling
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
music. So yeah, I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So much work you put in there. So, and I really appreciate that. And you have also a whole bunch of mixes and remixes. I'm interacting right now with a couple of people here on my Discord, and here's a question related to this, maybe a little bit. The Renegades of Rhythm.
Hmm.
So, what was the process of creating the Renegades of Rhythm with DJ Shadow? No, right?
Um, that was okay. So just to
It's a
kind
question from B-Boy Shaq from Ecuador.
of
Have
okay.
you? Yeah,
What
the
did you say?
B-Boy
B-Boy
crew.
Shaq from Ecuador.
Yeah, B-Boy Shaq. Yeah, is
Okay.
a friend of mine. Yeah, there
Okay.
are a
B-Boy
couple of
Shaq.
yeah yeah.
That started with the purchase of Africa Bambaata's record collection by
Mhm,
Cornell University for their
mhm,
hip hop archive.
mhm,
So a friend of ours brokered that deal. He wanted to do something special to honor um, the the fact that the academic world was recognizing Bambaata's records as artifacts. It was a big deal.
Yeah,
So
sure.
he, by doing something special, he wanted us to do, Shadow and I, to do kind of like a brain freeze style mix with the records. And Shadow,
Right.
as forward thinking as he always is, was like, no,
Hmm.
no, let's not do that. Let's instead do a mix and a tour, um, using the records.
Hmm.
And so we had to get their permission, and because they're the owners
Hmm.
of the records, we're just borrowing them and taking them around the world, to like places like Zagreb,
Hmm.
and so they said yeah, and we spent about a month putting this mix together and this huge visual accompaniment that was just absolutely stunning, using
Hmm.
these artifacts, which are, I mean, these things are living, breathing examples of hip hop being born.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
these were the
Yeah.
copies that were being spun. These copies of Jimmy Castor Bunch were the ones being spun at Bronx River Center in 1976.
Hmm.
And now they're on stage with us being played for an audience in
Wow.
2014. It was
That's
like
so
it
great.
was like a walking museum.
Yeah.
And so just to kind of give you an example of the weight of that was on our shoulders as far as what we were carrying and
Hmm.
how careful we were with these artifacts, but yet we were still cutting them up like crazy and doing the most we could to manipulate them an entertaining show. So it had so many layers to it. I mean, it was
Hmm.
just.
Hmm.
I think that was like it was like that last one at some point in the tour. He's like, Shadow was like, I think this is going to be the last time that I ever DJ with records like this. And I'm like, yeah, because I would retire this whole genre right now. I mean, this is it. This is bucket list shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the process was it as it always is with Shadow when we do these mixes, brain freeze or product placement or hard sell. It's
Hmm.
pretty hardcore regiment for a few weeks putting it together. I know he was very adamant about arranging the set in a certain way that didn't make sense to me, but he had a story in his head that he wanted to tell. And me, I'm always like tempo specific, so I'm like, okay, we'll start slow and then we'll build up. But his thing is like not so tempo specific. It's like, no, I want to tell this story this way, and I think if we use these records, but then we switch the tempo and it told a different story at this point. It's very interesting. The storytelling,
Hmm.
our storytelling prowess uh, lies in different directions. Him and I. So when we come together, it creates a perfect uh, a perfect set, I think,
Yeah.
because he won't think of what I'm thinking and vice versa. And so
Hmm.
when we put it all together and add our, techniques and scratches and juggles and stuff like that, it has so many layers to it, the
That's
performance
so
and the
cool.
mix.
Wow. That's such an amazing story. That's so cool. I mean, Africa Bambaataa,
Yeah.
he's a god to me. I think A Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, and Africa Bambaataa are like my favorite hip hop
Yeah, I
artists of
mean,
all time.
Native Tongue is a direct extension of Zulu Nation.
Native Tongue, yeah,
Yeah,
Zulu Nation, right?
epic.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
all that does really stem from
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
I'm
Zulu.
actually wearing my Zulu Nation cap. I have a cap,
Oh shit!
so I'm
Okay,
wearing one right now,
right on.
just especially for this episode. All
Nice.
right, yeah. I have another question here. Miguel OG4 says, "What was the craziest outfit you ever had on a stage?"
Huh.
Are you into that kind of thing? Wearing,
No, I'm as plain Jane as it gets when it comes to clothes.
yeah,
But
yeah.
let me think about
Are
it.
you into sneakers and stuff or not
Not
really?
I am. I have them,
Yeah, yeah,
but I'm one of those guys that just lets them get dirty.
yeah.
What's the craziest thing? I'm gonna say that there was a show we did in Japan,
Hmm.
Shadow and I, where we wore our our costumes. So he, product placement. He's the motocross guy. He's wears a like a motocross suit,
Okay.
with a helmet, goggles, and I'm a chef, so I wear a chef suit with a hat and everything.
Hmm.
And so we wore that for the last show in Japan, and that landed on Halloween night. So that was probably as wild as it got. We showed up in full regalia for our product placement CD mix.
All right. Awesome. Can I ask you a couple of other questions? I have like two or three more from guys here on.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Yeah. What's hip hop's greatest MC of all time? Oh,
Um,
that's a hard
it
one.
depends. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a few. So Black Thought from the
Hmm.
Roots.
The Roots.
I think he's a tough one, tough act to follow.
Yeah.
He's up there. He's one of my top. Pharoah Monch. Pharoah Monch is great. Um, Micah Nine. Micah Nine is kind of like, it's tough, man. You have to be there, like, because it's hard to find examples of how great he is on recorded
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
But if you saw him in 91, 92, 93, you'd be like, this is incredible. I think that there's some great examples, though. The first two Freestyle Fellowship albums, Inner City Boundaries, Convolutions of Jazz,
Hmm.
the things he was doing with singing and rhythm, unlike any other MC. Go check out Die Cut Rap video
Danka Rap.
that
Mm.
he's on with D'Anthony Parks on drums.
Mm.
That gives you a kind of a good idea of what some of his better moments. But uh, yeah, that guy's a god to me. I mean, he is just amazing. He's like the John Coltrane of rap.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
so that's you know, Pasta News from De La's pretty. I put him up there pretty high. He's changed
Hmm.
the game a few times.
For sure. Hmm.
Um, yeah, those are my favorite. Doom. Doom is up there too.
Yeah,
MF Doom.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. He passed away recently, right?
Yeah,
What a great loss.
yeah, yeah. I've been listening
And
to Gazillion Ear a lot, which is in like 2009, and I love that.
yeah,
I love that shit.
and maybe one more here from Caroline. What's the story behind "Sound of the Police"? That's one of your mixes, right?
That is, yeah. That's a good topic.
Yeah.
Sound of the Police has a few different talking points.
Hmm.
Let's take the main one.
All right.
Mulatu did his first show in LA ever
Mm-hmm.
in his entire
Mm-hmm.
life.
What year was that?
In 2000, it's 2009, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was 2009. And B plus slash his company Mochilla put on the show. It was a series of shows called Timeless, and it was Mulatu was one, Arta Verikai from Brazil was another, David Axelrod was supposed to be a third. Um, David Axelrod was a no-show. So anyway, the first
Mm-hmm.
one, he asked me if I could open up for Mulatu, and I was like, okay, great. I can't just play
Awesome.
records, not for Mulatu away. I have to do something that's going to be performance worthy and pays
Mm-hmm.
respect to Ethiopian music, how much I love it. Not only that, but how much I love music from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to do a one turntable loop pedal performance. I was using the loop pedal for the hard sell set with DJ Shadow. It was like 8 turntables and two loop pedals. But
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do something that pared it down, like minimalized the setup so much that it became like a sonic tightrope performance. And it was so difficult to loop original pressings of like African and Colombian records and stack loops in front of an audience wearing a suit, in like
Hmm.
an academic environment.
Yeah.
um, but that's what I set out to do, and so I was so impressed with the fact that I even tried to do something like that that I recorded
Hmm.
it. I recorded the rehearsal sessions, and I made a
Oh,
mix
really?
CD out of it and sold it.
Uh-huh.
And it goes from Ethiopian to cumbia to Brazilian to what's another, Nigerian,
Hmm.
um, Afro funk. Uh, what else is on there? Um, that's most of it. Yeah, that's most of it. Yeah, so Sound of the Police has so many different meanings. Obviously, the KRS One song, Sound of the Police, so there's like a heavy hip hop nod
Yeah.
to the title. But then also, um, back in the 70s, a lot of Ethiopian bands were military.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, there's, a reference to that as well. Um, and so yeah, I wanted to do something special, and from a performance side of things and a conceptual side of things, and have it be challenging, not only for me to execute but for the listener, because back in 2009 when I was creating it, not a lot of people were listening to that type of music.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like certainly in that one, in like a mix where it's that concentrated.
Yeah.
So I thought it was, a little aggressive as far as like a musical share, because I didn't really hold back. I don't feel like I held back from the things that I had at my disposal back then. I was kind of giving like the the hardest of the hard, from my crates of that type of music. So,
Hmm.
and there was a moment where I was like, is this too much? Am I going too hard? Are people going to be like, we can't get with this because it's too deep, or it's too,
Yeah.
not too deep, but like it's just so foreign
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we have no way in. So, I tried to do things like, if I were being introduced to this music, how could I be kind of eased into it rather than just like jumping headfirst into
Hmm.
um, things like Alamei by, like a Mulatu production, which might be sound
Yeah.
like it's from Mars.
Yeah.
So I would do things like dress it up with Fela, and things that people probably already might be familiar with to
Yeah.
help usher in the more kind of deeper uh, deeper selections. So and it did well. I mean, it was one of the most um, publicized things that I've done on my
Yeah.
own. I did hire a publicist for it, and so yeah, it did quite well.
Cool. It's interesting what you're saying, because you're kind of always thinking about the listener too. So not only the things that you like and love, but also you think, okay, what is the listener going to think about this, right?
Yeah, I think it's, some artists might say that is not a good thing, but
Yeah.
me as somebody who is a listener, uh,
Yeah.
I have to respect what people might think. I don't put everything on it. I mean, I might disregard what the thought process might be because I have a mission to express this thing. And if
Yeah.
people have a problem with it or say this about it, then I still have to do it. I stand by that. But at the same time, I kind of want to brace myself for what the thought process is going to be once I
Hmm.
do put out that thing that I have to do. Are
Yeah.
you going to get, negative, positive, a little of both, a little, everything is so sensitive these days, especially now. It seems like
Hmm. Yeah.
anything that you say has so many different meanings from so many different perspectives, and it's almost
Absolutely.
impossible to take it all in before you do it. But just to know, so I'm not caught off guard when something does
Yeah.
happen. And I do take all the feedback from from the audience in the world of what I do with a grain of
Mm-hmm.
salt,
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I also listen. It's not like I never take the position like, oh, the audience doesn't matter, what they
Yeah.
think. I mean,
Yeah.
let's, what's the title of my first solo album? It's The Audience is Listening. So right off the bat, I took the audience into consideration,
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
I'm part of the audience. So
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. Now, I think in this context, I have here also a question on my Discord from Chris808. He asks, was it a nice experience working with Shakira? That's something I didn't even know that you
Mm.
once collaborated, right,
I
with
did
her.
a 3-month tour in Europe, uh,
Yeah.
being her opening act.
Uh huh.
Um, oh yeah, she was great.
Hmm.
Her crew was great. Her crew of dancers were fun, and her bodyguard was awesome. She was. I think I met her at the first show and the last show,
Hmm.
and it was one of those things probably where she was like, who is this guy? And then at the end of the tour, she was very appreciative and was like, "Thank you so much for doing this.
Nice.
Great, what you did for the crowd to get them in the zone before I came on stage was awesome." And so she was great.
Yeah. Cool. But I think you mentioned last time, like the first concert, the first gig wasn't that good.
Yeah, not. Yeah, she didn't say. I mean, her people. I almost got fired. Just because I didn't know how to. I mean, thinking of the audience, I didn't know how
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
translate what I wanted to say to an audience like that in a way that they would listen or care. Um, I mean, talk about going off the deep end on, like just what I did, beat juggling, hip hop. Like, this isn't
Yeah.
that crowd at all. I
Yeah.
was DJing like I was DJing at a 200 cap room, but it was like
Mm.
30,000 people.
Yeah. That's what I. Yeah.
It's a totally different dialogue, and
Yeah.
so it was a huge growing experience. I'm sure, I'm kind of saying the same things, but just to kind of reiterate, it was this the second most single growing experience of my life is getting booed by an arena full of people in Hamburg, Germany.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I was checking your YouTube channel today. I was listening to your Candlelight series.
Hmm.
I'm really enjoying those mixes. They're really cool,
Yeah.
especially the Ethiopia one.
Oh, thank you.
That
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Wow.
I really love those. I'd say, and during the pandemic, that was one of my favorite things that I did.
Tell us a little bit about your website. You have a lot of things going on right now on the web, right? You have a
Yeah, not
podcast.
enough, not nearly
Yeah.
enough. But
Yeah.
I I sit and I mix. I archive, whether it's my own stuff or
Yeah.
other people's things. And so right now, what I've been doing, well, throughout the pandemic, I've been
Yeah.
going through old drives, rescuing old drives, just trying to take
Nice.
stock of everything that I can save and gather and put it in an archive. And now I'm starting to go back into that archive and go, okay, so what do I want to
Hmm.
reintroduce? What do I want to turn people onto that they might not know about? So whether it's mixtapes from the '90s, that was a great campaign. People really dug that.
Cool. Yeah.
Uh, my favorite mixtapes, things that I haven't done, but other people have done that
Hmm.
inspired me to my own mixtapes. And now what I'm doing is going into uh, my original sessions, so recording sessions, and
Hmm.
stemming out the isolated parts that made the song in the recordings. So like I'm going through Jurassic 5 stuff and
Oh,
remixes and things
cool.
like that all throughout throughout the 90s. So I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it's fun to go through it and at least organize it and be like, hey, if we wanted to put out Jurassic 5 recording sessions so people can remix them, yeah, maybe, you know, they're here. So so we'll see. But that, you know, I don't you know, there's 5 other people in the group, so I'd want to get their ideas and their blessings to see what could be done with that material. But then there's also, you know, the sessions of my own stuff that I'm rescuing and trying to figure out what to do with. So I try to satiate my subscribers with this material. It's, you know, highly exclusive, obviously. And so if they want to, you know, peek deeper into the Cut Chemist world, this is the best way to do it.
Yeah. So they can subscribe on your Bandcamp, and they have access to all those.
We keep the
in digital form, right?
Yeah. So you can download everything that's up there. I think there's there's over 10 mixes. I think there's almost like 20 or 25 mixes up right now. So you can get all those, download high quality, and then you also get little perks like I think it's like 10% off of any physical goods and stuff like that, which a lot of people take advantage of during like Bandcamp Friday. I'll do special sales because Bandcamp waives the commission. So that'll be like the time that I offer rare vinyl and things like that. And so if you're a subscriber, you get, you know, a cool 10% off. So that's nice. And it's been good. It's been a lot of fun. I've also been, you know, starting a podcast series exclusively for subscribers. So they get to have kind of a hear me talk and shout them out and talk about stories from my past that are funny. Yeah. The Shakira one should probably be up there pretty soon. I should tell that story. It's a lot of fun when I'm really detailed about it.
Okay, cool. And you were also on Twitch, I think, for the first time. You had a performance on Twitch, right? I think it was a month ago.
I did, yeah.
I wasn't able to watch it live. Was it good?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was so fun. It inspired me to invest in a stream studio. So I went and
wow, really? Do you have like the whole setup now, a streamer setup?
Well, Arabian Prince, who's kind of he's a member of NWA and LA DJ. I mean, royalty, really.
Yeah.
And, he custom builds PCs. So he. Melody from the Beat Junkie said you should call Arabian, have him build you one, and he'll bring everything over and set it up for you. And so he did. And so I haven't started yet, but I have like a 3-camera, overhead and over here and a whole separate computer ready to go.
Whoa.
So I'm gonna probably start doing some streams, which is funny because as we're kind of, I don't know how things are over there, but people are kind of over this pandemic thing with the vaccines rolling out, things are opening up. So as the pandemic kind of comes to its last stage, that's when I decide to start streaming, right?
Yeah.
While everybody's going back to the club, I'll be at home streaming and no one will watch.
Yeah. But I think the streamer thing, it's not going to stop, I guess. It's
No. It's just I guess I should have done this a year ago. But, but it's all good. Got to get in at some point.
Mm-hmm. So you are now also on Twitch. Do you have your own channel now also?
Yeah, actually I have 2, but I'm promoting the new one, which is DJ Cut Chemist. All one word.
Cut Chemist.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Listen, Cut, thank you so much for your time. I don't know, is there anything else you want the world to know about Cut Chemist before we end the show?
Just, stay tuned to all the platforms. The fact that you went to YouTube is awesome. I often neglect YouTube, and so I'm really glad that you brought it up, and it reminds me to keep feeding that platform with new material because I think it's really important. Stay in touch with the DJ Cut Chemist Twitch page because I think I may bring the candlelight stuff over there.
Nice.
as well as doing things like tutorials and DJ sets and performances and stuff like that. It's not just going to be about DJing. It's going to be about a bunch of different things. So
Yeah.
stay tuned
Yeah.
for that.
I love that. I love that. I mean, I'm a geek, so I'm really excited about to see your whole setup
Yeah,
with the mics and cameras and stuff.
yeah, man. I'm excited and scared to start, but yeah, looking forward to it. And that's basically it. Hopefully, when things do start to really, really open up, and maybe I'll start doing gigs again outside, which would be great.
Yeah.
I mean,
I hope
outside
you
my
can
house.
visit. I hope you can visit Ecuador or something else in the future.
I'm looking forward to it. It would be my pleasure.
Yeah. Lots of music also to discover here. We'll talk about that.
I'll bet. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Cut Chemist, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. It was a true honor and a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. And let me know if
Bye-bye.
there's anything I need to do to close out, or do I just leave?
No. Now it's everything okay. You just have you.
Well, thanks for your time.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.